Hello and welcome. My name is Leah Kopke. I'm a 3D motion design freelancer, and this is my 3D modeling podcast. We've started 3D modeling a library. We've 3D modeled some hand statues, bookends, a bookcase. We UV wrapped some books for that bookcase as well. And I've started thinking a little bit about the actual composition and what else is going inside of this room. And you can see that here on my screen. So I added in some bookshelves over here. They're really similar to this one over here, same style, except it doesn't have the hand statue pushing this. We have a wood burning stove over here. I've started blocking in things. I have a rug here. We could add some texture to it, make it look like it's fur or something like that. And I've added in a couch here to lean up against the bookshelf so that it makes a little reading nook that's comfy. And there's some small tables over here that are easy to move. They have more weight at the bottom so that they give that visual sense of stability, but they still look like something you could easily pick up and move. So those are the elements in here that we're going to start 3D modeling. You'll notice that the golden spiral is overlaid in here. So I used this really to guide the composition. So you could see that it follows the hand, the bookshelf shape, and it comes all the way back around into here. And we end up looking again at this area of focal point. And let's go into our camera. If you click on your Redshift camera, go into your display. For composition, you can select golden spiral to turn this on. You can mirror it in any direction you'd like to help you figure out your composition. I made sure to have some elements in the foreground, some things in the background to have that layering effect that adds an extra sense of depth into a space, into a render. So with all of those elements combined, this is what I'm thinking for the direction of this going in, just roughly modeled and placed. But we're going to be 3D modeling these elements together so that you can do it as well if you'd like to add some more details around your bookcase. So let's go ahead and start off with the couch. So I'll open up a new scene over here, and I'm going to make sure that my project settings have my project scale matching my display units in the preferences. So you could see that my display for my units is showing inches, and we need the project scale to match that. If you want to work in centimeters or something else, you are welcome to do so. This is what I'm choosing to work in for today. If you want to get creative with your couch and make it look different than this one, go for it. Be you, be creative, do your thing. I'm going to start off by dropping in a cube. And this cube, I want it to be 30 inches in depth. I want it to be 8.7 inches tall. So this will be the base of the couch. You can think of it that way. And for the X, I'm going to make it 90 inches. If I hit the middle mouse button, I can see all four views. I'll hit the middle mouse button again in the X view. I want to make this editable, and I want this axis to snap to this lower edge. So we can make this editable by hitting the C hotkey, or you can hit the button down here. So now we can edit this cube a little bit more easily. I'm going to enable the axis up here. You can also use the L hotkey in order to do that. And we'll want to snap this, so I'll enable snap. And we want to snap this to the edge, so I'll make sure that the edge is enabled. And now with that, we can move the axis and snap it to that edge, which is great. I also want to check this in the front. Make sure that's lined up. So that's looking good. I can turn this off, or you can hit the L hotkey in order to turn that off. And at this point, we actually want to snap this to the grid work plane. So I'm hitting that gear again, because what I want to do is move this up so that it's level with the floor. And I'm hoping it'll just snap there. If it doesn't, we can always go into the coordinates and just zero this out so that it's on the floor. So that's looking good. That's our base. We're going to save beveling for last, so we're not going to do that right now. I'll grab my polygons mode and I'll want to adjust this side and this side. I want to extrude them. Now we've covered the extrude, and the hotkey for it is MT. If you guessed that, you're doing awesome. It's good to try to remember all of these. And I want to extrude this out about 1 inch. But you can also click and drag and then just dial these in afterwards. So there we go. You can see we have nice loops still. Everything is in quads. That looks good. That's the way we want it to be. And now that we have those, we really want to extrude this part up. So let's just extrude this about 10 inches for right now. We can always adjust this further later, but this is a very good start. And now that we have that done, I'm going to name this couch base. We're going to drop in some cushions here. And I'm actually thinking that I may move these up further, but I want to first visualize how the cushions look and then bring it up. So that this height will be adjusting. For these cushions, I want to drop in another cube. So there we go. We want this cube to be 30 inches by, let's try 7, maybe 9, and see how that feels, by 30. I'm going to make this cube 9 inches tall, and I'm going to turn on our garage shading line so that I can see our edges in here a little bit more easily. This cube needs to be 30 inches in the Z, 30 inches in the X. So that's the overall shape of our seat cushion. So I'll go ahead and name the seat cushion. We're going to use the subdivision surface on it, so I think it would help to add in 2 segments going each direction for this cushion, and we'll drop in our subdivision surface, and I'll name this SS cushion. I want it to be in the same location as the seat cushion, but I also want the seat to line up with the axis at the bottom again, just so that it's easier to adjust. So once again, we're going to go into here, hit the L button in order to enable axis, and we're going to make the seat cushion editable. You can hit the C hotkey or hit this button here to do so. And we're going to need to snap this. Axis to the bottom. And if you're having trouble snapping to what you want to, you can turn off some of the other snapping options, and then it'll find that edge a little bit easier. I'll turn off enable axis, move this down. We can snap it to that base part. And that's the beginning of a cushion. Now we need this cushion to be within here. We want this to have the same location as this. So what we'll actually do is drop the subdivision surface within the seat cushion object. We'll hit this little button down here, the coordinate manager, and I'll hit reset transformation. That will zero out the location, but make sure that you have the subdivision surface selected when you zero it out, reset transformation, because we want this to be in the same location as this so that we can move them more easily as a group. Then I'll drop the seat cushion within the subdivision surface cushion, and you can see this is looking pretty rounded. A little bit too rounded, actually. But we can fix that. So I'll hit UL. I have the seat cushion selected, and I'll select the top. I'm holding the period key, and you can see that I can adjust how rounded this is by adjusting the period key and dragging my mouse. So period key is selected, and I am dragging my mouse. It's adjusting there. We've gone through the settings for the subdivision surface in the past. I'm going to viewport solo this. I'll go over the subdivision surface settings briefly, but I won't go as in depth as that initial episode where I really covered everything. I have a whole playlist on subdivision surface modeling too. So I'll use the period key again, drag my mouse, and we can adjust how round this is. Now, you could see that this is still pretty low poly looking. So we could even increase the subdivisions a little bit more to see if that helps to smooth it out a bit. We'll also need to adjust these corners here. So if I want to do this on both sides, I can enable symmetry. The X and the Y symmetry are enabled, so now I can adjust these symmetrically. And there's our rounded cushion. I'm going to subdivide this one more time. We can drag the point in the center of here up a little bit. I'm going to turn off symmetry for that. I'll just give it a little bit of roundness so that it looks comfy cozy. I'm just moving some points a little bit here and there just to add that sense of softness to this and making it look a little bit less perfectly geometric. And once we've done that, we can unsolo this, and we have a couple options here. We could either create an instance for this, or we could duplicate this and adjust the points individually so that each one's a little bit different. I think I'll do the latter. So I'm going to select this, hold Control, hold Shift, so that we utilize quantize, and I can snap to 30 inches. Now quantize is using whatever settings you have in here when you hold Shift. So I am moving 5 inches and snapping to every 5 inches. I'll move this on over, snap, we moved that over 30 inches. So this is our very nice start here. I'm going to name this one center, C for center. This one will be R for right. And then this one will be L for left. And I can group these together and rename these seat cushions. Let's try polygon mode. We'll select both of these, empty, 10 inches, apply. Okay, that looks nicer. And we're going to need some cushions for the back. So we have some options for how we can do that. And again, you can 3D model this however creatively you feel like doing it. We actually have a pretty good base with these cushions. So we could, in fact, copy this and paste it. And then move this up 10 inches. And then in here, we could take a look at these. And a lot of them have the name seat. So we're going to want to change that. So I'm going to select all of these. And then I'm going to hit Shift C. And I'm going to look for the naming tool. And once we do that, I'm going to double click on this. And I'm going to replace the word seat with back. And hit Replace Name. Now you can see that it replaced everywhere that said seat with back. So now it says back cushions, left, right, center. So that'll save us some time because we like to 3D model in the easiest way possible. Now that we've done this, we're going to need to actually adjust these. So I'm going to select the center, these objects here. Go into edge mode, polygon mode. Actually, object model mode will work fine for this. I'll use T. I'm going to scale this in. Then I'm going to move these back. I'm going to change the quantize amount to 1 inch. And then I want to go in here and just subtly adjust the points to shape these a way that feels good and natural. And then for fun, I just want to add a little bit more shaping here. So I'm just grabbing the points, pushing and pulling until they look a way that I like. I want these to be slightly narrower at the top, so I'll pull these in and move them. We should also probably add a cushion over here. So we can go ahead and easily duplicate this. I'll just grab these points. Actually, I'll grab the entire object and let's just start by scaling. I'm holding Shift to scale in increments. I'll move this over. Move it down. Holding Shift again to use quantize. It's nice to move things in whole numbers while you're 3D modeling if you can, or at least not just randomly in space. Like you have a system to it. If you have a bunch of decimal points, it gets a little confusing when you're building off of that. Something like this is nice. I'm going to move this point in. And there's our couch. Let's go ahead and make the small table that we had as on top of the couch. So if you look here, we had this. For reading or working or whatever you're doing, just a little table for your lap. And we're going to add that in here. So I'm going to drop in a cube. With this cube dropped in, I'll go ahead and adjust this to be, I feel like at least 2 feet. So at least 2 feet in the X. And the Y, let's try 9. And the Z, let's try 13. I'm gonna move this up. So you can see that's the general size of the thing. Maybe I'll make it 26. And now we'll make this, I'll call this seat table. I'm sure it has a different name than that. And then I'll hit the C hotkey in order to make that editable. What I don't need is this. I don't need this. I don't need this. I don't need this. I'm deleting all these polygons. Actually, I do need the sides. I'm going to keep the sides. I take that back. I'm just deleting the back, the front, and the bottom. And now that we've done that, we can grab these 2 edges and we can hit the T hotkey and scale them in. So that we get that nice angle. And then we can use the MS hotkey in order to pull up the bevel tool. And I'll increase our subdivisions to 3, decrease the offset, and that just about works pretty nice. So I'll go ahead and accept that. Now this is very, very thin. This is in fact infinitely thin. So we don't want this to be infinitely thin. We need to add some thickness to this. So we've covered the thicken tool before in the past. I'm so used to pulling up tools here with the commander, but just so that you also know where it is in here. You can find the thicken tool in here. It's relatively new, so make sure you have Cinema 4D updated so that you can see it. And we'll call this thicken table. We're gonna drop this in here. You can see this is way too thick. This is not gonna work for some bent plywood. So we're going to need to decrease the thickness to about 1 inch. Or you know what? I'm actually feeling 0.5. 0.5 sounds good. And you can adjust the position of this. I'm going to adjust it to negative 100%. So that's the direction this is being thickened in. And this is looking pretty nice. Now the thing about adding a wood texture to a table like this is this gotcha moment. Because if this is bent plywood, that means that the wood grain has to bend with this. And UV mapping something this shape is not super intuitive, so let's go through that together. I'm going to open up the asset browser here and the materials here. And I'm going to search for material. I'm going to search for maple. And I'm trying to remember the maple I chose earlier for the other things in the room. I'm going to go with this one. I'm going to drag and drop it over here. And I'll hide that. Let's click on this and see our texture here. So if we make this nice and big, where is this texture? I just saw it a moment ago. Where did it go? Oh, here we are. So you can see that the wood grain is running from left to right on here, and this is bent. So we need to make this so that it doesn't look bent in the UV map, so that when we apply this texture, it isn't having the end grain go the wrong direction. The end grain needs to follow this. It can't be doing this thing. And in fact, if you change this to be cubic, this just doesn't look right. It just doesn't, the wood grain wouldn't go like that. It looks wrong in every aspect. Wood does not do this. We cannot have an object doing this. It is unacceptable. So let's go ahead and UV wrap this and fix it. But we're going to UV wrap it, remembering in our head that this is the texture we're using and we want the wood grain to go a certain direction. So we're keeping that in mind. I'm gonna turn that off. Okay, so let's switch over to our UV edit. And let's also solo this. Now, it is a little bit complicated to be UV editing a generator object like this, so I'm actually going to right click on this and choose current state to object. That'll make a copy of this that is just polygons and no generators in here. Now this will group together and we'll call that table construction geo, and we're just gonna hide that. That's so that if we change our mind about how we 3D modeled this, we still have our generator in here, we have our base project, so we can adjust that. But we're working on this new one now because it will be easier to edit the UVs. So we have our UV manager here. You can see our UVs, our polygons here. If I click on a section, you can see it highlight here. And you can see how this just doesn't make sense to have these overlapping or running the direction that they do. So let's just start off with seeing what happens when we click box. But first we want to make sure we have all the polygons selected. Okay, now we'll hit box. So it lays it out nicely where we can see the different sides and the different groups, and you can see the front and the back and all of that, and this is good. This is a good start, just visually. Now the thing that isn't working is this bend in here. And we want the wood grain to run across. So this is going to need to actually be straight. So if we just want to select this, we can click UF, and we're just selecting that island. UF selects a group of polygons. So it selected that for us. We're going to use the E hotkey, and I'm just going to move this up here. I'm going to rectangle select these, and I'm going to rotate them. And move them up. Then I'm going to deselect these 2 points, and then I'm going to rotate these and move them up. I'm going to deselect these 2 points. I'm going to rotate these, and then I'll move them up again. So the idea is we are slowly straightening this out by each point. And the idea is we just want to get this a little bit straighter so that the grain on here is straighter too. And I'll do this to the other side and speed this up a little bit for everybody. So you can see this is our next group here. And it's actually the front is connected with the top. Now this isn't a bad thing. It just, we need to straighten this out. So I'm going to actually move this up here. And I also want to think of how this would connect with the other one, just a little bit. So that could be nice if they connect like that. So what I'll do, I'm going to grab this point, and just to make sure that these two match, I'm grabbing both of them. And you can see that this actually needs to be flipped in order for those to match up. So I'm just going to try rotating this 180 degrees. And I'll move it back into place. And now you can see that they are pretty close to lining up on here. I'm going to speed this up a little bit for all of you, but what we are doing is we are going to go ahead and make sure that our points are selected and that we are snapping to our points. We have our snap on, and I'm going to move this and snap it and make sure that all these points line up. As I snap them, you'll see that this edge changes from white to blue, and that means that we are connecting these properly, which is good. So you can see here that we have this laid out right now. We also need to add in these sides. So let's go ahead and take a look at which ones those are. We'll match them up. So this is a side. We'll need to move this over here. And we need to figure out what point aligns with what. So I'm going to guess that's these two, and then I'm going to click on both of them and just verify that that is correct. So let's go ahead and connect these two sides together. We're going to do the same thing with connecting these into, we're going to do the same thing as when we were connecting these three parts. So we'll go ahead and do that now. And I'll speed this up a little bit so we get through this. Okay, so at this point I have this all as one island, and if I go ahead and look at Relax UV, I can try applying it to this group, and you can see that this looks a lot nicer just from clicking that button. And I'm gonna rotate this around just ever so slightly. So that's a nice way to even things out a little bit once you've connected that all as one island. Now we still have these other little islands over here, and they're not really connected to each other. So what I'm actually going to do is take a look at underneath this thing. I'm just going to select all of this, and then I'm looking at it from this view, and I'm just going to choose as our projection frontal. And it got it pretty close. Now that we've done that, I'm going to go back to Relax UV, going to apply it, and that looks a lot better. So I'm going to rotate this using the R hotkey. If you're new here, E is for move, R is for rotate, T is for transform or scale. So we got that pretty close. And then we have these two little edges here. And these are going to be our end grain. So I'm actually going to want to rotate this 90 degrees. Like that. Gonna just move it over here for now, and then I'll rotate this one as well 90 degrees like that, and I'll move it over here. I am going to scale those up in a moment. I just want to scale up this bottom section first. We can use UF for fill selection, and that'll just select that whole island there. And then we can use Control T to get our controls here, and I can just scale this up closer to that other corner. So this will have a continuous texture. This will have a continuous texture. That'll just look nicer. And then we got these two little guys here. Control T to get those controls, and we'll just scale them up again. And this might actually be a little bit too big because they're large for the proportion of this, but I'm kind of curious what it's looking like right now. So if we want to see what this looks like, we can click on our texture, change it from cubic to UVW mapping, and you'll see a preview of how the texture actually looks on here. So you can see that the grain is now wrapping along here, which looks a lot better. This now follows that edge. That's much better. I don't mind that at all. If we were being extra technical, what we could do is we could create those layers you can find in plywood. If you want to be extra technical with your plywood, you could even go ahead and take a photo up close of an edge of plywood like this and adjust that in there. And that's one way you could get that layered effect along these edges, is you could literally draw them in. Something creative that we could do that I've just thought of in this moment is, since we 3D modeled this with pretty clean lines, I'm going to turn off the IPR, is we could kind of fake that we had created the texture so that there's those layers in between here. I'm going to use ML and I'm going to create some loops in here. I'm holding shift so that I can snap to the center. So I'll snap to the center there. I'll snap, whoops, I'll snap right here. I'll snap here, here. So the idea is we want these to be even. So maybe I'll do it this way. I'm just snapping, keeping all of these layers even. And you'll see that these wrap all the way around. So if you want to fake that layered effect and not have to create a whole texture from scratch, there's a little bit of a trick to that. This is the time-saving method. I'm going to go back into the standard view. And what we're going to do here is we're going to actually create two maple textures. So I'm copying and pasting that one. This one is going to be called dark. And this one's just the regular one. Now we'll click on the dark one. We're going to press this plus button here, and we're going to look for a color correct. Here we go. We're going to drop this into our scene. We're going to add our base color into the input and use this as our export to our color. Now the cool thing about this is you have this gamma option here. You can make it look darker. So like how these plywood options here, they have darker layers and lighter layers. You can really see that. Oh, there was an image I just saw where it was really prevalent and you could really see it. Where'd it go? Right here, you can really see those darker layers and those lighter layers right here too. So we're going for that look. And I'm making that darker for the darker layers. And now what we do is we go into this polygon mode and we use UL. And we select these polygon loops using UL for loop selection. We have a whole episode on loop selection. So I've selected those. I'm going to drag our darker color here. And now we're simulating those layers you'd see in plywood. And that looks pretty darn sweet, I must say so myself. Now, if you want this to be smoother, you could make this a little bit higher poly. And you could go ahead and hide these facets here if you're going to be really up close with the camera. But if you're not going to be that up close with the camera and you're about this distance, no one will be able to tell. If you did want to make this higher poly and hide those curves there, you could use ML and add in loops along here, edge loops, and just make sure that you have preserve curvature on. And it will add in loops considering the curvature. I'm not going to do that because I like it lower poly. And this is going to be a pretty dense scene, so we don't need to make it more dense in my mindset. But if you're using this for a different purpose and you're going to have that up close camera thing going on, you may need to add more polygons and hide that curvature. So that looks pretty cool. I'm going to have this appear again so we can see it. So it's like a little TV tray for your lap, which is nice. Something that I may want to do is move the axis just so that it's in a better place. I'm going to look at this from the top view. Something like that is good. I'll turn off enable axis, and then I just think things look better when they're slightly angled. Makes things look used and like we've lived here and done things. If when you're looking at this you feel like it has a little bit too much depth, you can always grab these edges over here and use the quantize and make sure that it's set to 1 inch, and then we can hold down shift and just move that in a couple inches, even 3 inches. And then you still have a pretty nicely sized table. So that's why it's helpful to have the couch here. It helps give you another reference for scale as you work. So that looks good. If you want to go ahead and texture this couch, you can. We can try using the cubic option for the couch. You'll see that the texture looks huge on here. Like this looks like it should be a small little 2x4, but yet it's huge. So if you want to go ahead and scale down this texture, you can do that here. Let's see what looks right. There were also some other maple textures in here. Let's go ahead and search for maple. And just see if there's something else that feels better. This one says it's for flooring. I'm just kind of curious what it would look like on here. So I'm gonna find out. I'm going to try cubic again. This time I'm just applying it to the bottom. I think what I'll try is something a little bit different and creative. I'm going to grab ML I'm just going to add a small little loop going around there. I'll add a small little loop going around here. And I'm going to grab these two loops. I'm going to put the darker wood color in here, just as an accent. And then I'm going to grab both of these. I'm going to add the regular maple to them. I'll make them cubic and scale them back down. And I'm going to see how this looks. So I think that wood color change looks cool. I want to try looking at this with a dome light instead because it's a little bit more even lighting. And I'll take down the intensity a little bit. So I feel good about this. I think this looks like a cool design. Now, something that this couch is missing is we need bevels on these things. We should go ahead and add those because bevels add realistic surfaces for the light to bounce off of. I'll also need to correct the end grain here a little bit, potentially. Let's think about this. So a really easy way to do this is you could just use the bevel deformer right over here. But I think what gives you more control sometimes is doing it by hand. But let's just try the bevel deformer and see what it looks like. And we can always do something different later. So I'm going to add this to the couch base. I want the offset to be something really small, like 0.1. Going to increase the subdivisions a little bit to 3. And then I put this before the other textures so that it fills in that bevel area. I don't like the way the grain is going on the top part. So I'm going to try going into the texture mode, and I'm just going to go ahead and use the R hotkey in order to rotate this. I'm holding down Shift so that I can snap to 90 degrees with the quantize. I'll try rotating it the other way. Oh, it's on UVW mapping. That's part of our problem. Let's try cubic. Let's see what cubic looks like. I mean, that looks better with the grain going that way. I want to deselect these two from those loop selections and update those selections because I want to see what the end looks like once I do that. So I think that looks better because once we deselected that from that selection, we're instead using the orientation of this. And I think that looks better with it running vertically, the grain. but you can see that we need to correct this side. So I'm going to select this. And I'm just only going to rotate the texture that I'm applying to here. And scale it so that it looks right. So that looks better. Now you'll notice that our cushions don't have any texture to them, so we should go ahead and fix that. So for these, let's look up fabric textures. And if you're feeling fun and funky, you can create your own fabric texture too. So there's definitely options here. But these will work as a good base for anything you want to add on top. I like the linen. I also like the cotton. I might just add these to this as a group and then change it to cubic to see how that's looking. That looks much better. I think I'd like to change the color. So you can adjust the color in here. To a nice green tea kind of color. And I'll add this. I'll actually just copy what I did here. Hold Control and drag it up to apply it to these cushions as well. So that's our couch and our little table. We were planning on adding some more things to here. We still need to make the small tables and drop in a pillow and a rug as well. I don't want to make this video too long, so I may just stop it here. I'm pretty happy with where it's at right now. And we can drop this into the other room. I actually like this new couch that I made more than the first one that I made as a way for me to think through the composition. So I'll probably drop this into my scene as well. And next time we'll 3D model some more parts of this project. So I hope to see you then. This has been fun. Thank you for 3D modeling with me. I hope to see you here next time. If you'd like to be notified when that episode comes out, please hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you are aware when it's here. And I'll see you next time.